Rate hikes, inflation, the future of the Canadian real estate market. We talked about all that with Tim Hudak in our episode of the Tom Storey Show, but I wanted to take a clip out of that conversation with Tim where he talks about where he sees the housing market going. And for people that don't know, Tim Hudak had a 20 plus year political career. He was the leader of the opposition with the Conservative Party in Ontario at a point of time, and he is now currently the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association, and they do a lot of lobbying to the government to make sure that consumers have a better experience when buying and selling a home. So I'm going to share a little clip with you from that podcast. If you want to check out the full podcast, it will be on our podcast channel. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the podcast channel. Here's the clip, and I hope you enjoy. I guess just what's your personal opinion on the market here with rates? I know none of us can have any prediction on where this is actually going to end up. Is it somewhere in between doomsday on the news versus what we're actually talking about on a day-to-day with our clients? Like, what's your opinion on this?
I'm a medium-term optimist on this. I think that we'll see further rate hikes, but I do hope that we're through the worst of it. And I'll tell you why, Tom. First of all, we got to fight inflation. I mean, your generation's not experienced it. I remember my parents talking about it, but man, the colossal bite now coming out of the paycheck of hardworking, ordinary Canadians just to pay for gas for the car, for the groceries, take your wife, girlfriend, or whoever out to dinner. My gosh, right? How much higher it's gone. It eats away at the savings of seniors. Like, it is a bad virus that just gets worse if you don't kill it. So they have to increase interest rates to try to get inflation under control again. It is tough medicine. And that means we have impacts. We can talk about what's happening in the market today. But I do believe that once we get to the cap, it plateaus and then starts coming down. Maybe that's late 23, early 24, that we're going to see a significant increase in demand. Number one, I think it's sooner rather than later because the most recent increase was only 50 basis points when the market thought it was going to be 75. The market responded favorably to that, thinking that, maybe Tiff Macklin and the gang have made the tough medicine and the worst is behind us. With respect to where I think demand is going to go, look, you've got in millennials the largest generation in the history of our country due to immigration and population growth. Canada's never experienced this type of people, this size of people coming into the marketplace. Now they're getting promoted, they're getting married, right? They're settling down. There's this fanciful notion by lazy people saying, well, millennials, they don't want to own homes. They just want to flit about from skybox rental to skybox rental. That's crap. We looked into it. They actually want to have homes as much as anybody before them. They just couldn't afford it. So millennials coming in. Number two, you've got a significant increase in immigration. We'll have the largest number of immigrants coming to Canada, the big share coming to the GTHA in 23 and 24. You have a return of foreign students. A lot of them invest in property as well when they're going to school here, and hopefully will settle here. And then don't forget, there's the bank of mom and dad. Right? The boomers are the wealthiest generation in Canada's history. And good for them. They worked hard. They saved up their money. They deserve it. But that bank of mom and dad will help finance more home purchases, once we get interest rates under control. They love their sons and daughters dearly, but they kind of want them to get out of the basement, right? And into a place of their own. For all those reasons, plus a limited supply from underbuilding, I am very confident that you see a strong increase in market activity once we hit a plateau in interest rates.
It's happened so rapidly that we haven't really figured out what the big effect is because it's like not enough time has passed between the announcements for us to really understand, right? And it's almost like we've got to have them have an announcement and not do anything and then wait 90 days from then to actually understand. Like we've gone through a transition zone of the first 3 months of this year were as insane as I've ever seen real estate in my decade of doing this. And it didn't feel good either, just to be clear. Like, it felt like this needs to cool down a bit. Do you have any worry in the fact that this is a moment in time, whether this lasts 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whether it's a 10-year recession, you can play worst case scenario on anything here, that developers or anyone else goes, okay, well, I don't want to build if no one's buying right now or the prices are going up, and that in 5 years from now, we have even more of a supply issue than we already have?
So let me add something to what you're saying, and it's another point why I'm a medium-term optimist. I'm transition now. But the Ontario economy, particularly the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area, has been doing quite well relative to other areas, and there's no reason to suspect that's going to change, right? So we won't be as strong, but relative to everybody else, I think we're in good shape. Where do I think that things are going to go on the supply side? I mentioned what's my number one job, and that's helping you guys create more Canadian homeowners. And it is insane that we actually built fewer homes in the 2000s than we did in the 1970s, right? Like that's nuts. So no wonder we've got a supply crisis. And governments will look at, this type of tax or that tax or this provision. They should focus every ounce of their energy on getting more homes built that people can actually afford. And we've had some successes. New legislation just came in, Build More Homes Faster Act, took a lot of our ideas. So I do feel optimistic about that. Not only is that, larger projects, subdivisions, condos, but also, just upsizing in some neighborhoods, home by home, into more lots, more places people can actually buy. I was part of the Housing Affordability Task Force. I was an honor. The Premier Ford put me on that. We laid out a very clear plan to get 1.5 million homes built in 10 years. We need that to catch up on affordability. I think the government made a good move and they're on that step, and I actually feel quite optimistic about it. Yeah, some short-term, turbulence are going through, but I think we finally got a plan on the table that's going to get homes built.
No, the More Homes Built Faster Act, that's what Ford announced, I think 2 weeks ago now. That's obviously great news because that's a way to bring more supply to the market. When we say 1.5 million homes, does that mean that, because my understanding of this, and clarify to me if I'm off on this, is that the main thing as a homeowner I hear from that announcement is I can have 3 dwelling units on my one property now, where I could make a legal basement apartment where I live upstairs and I could build a garden suite. Is a basement considered another home built? Is that of the 1.5? And is a garden suite a home, or is that like a half point? Like, how do we count those?
Yeah, if they can be owned, they'll count them as homes.
Okay.
And there's rentals beyond the 1.5, right?
Sure.
So they want to create both. We need both rentals and homes to be owned, but they'll count that. The pure model, what I would love to see. I mean, just picture for those watching home, whether you're in Etobicoke, you're in Vaughan, or you're down in St. Catharines or whatever, and you got that wartime bungalow, and it's pretty worn out. And today, the homeowner, she can knock that down and build a 4-story monster home for one family, and that's great. That's the right. They've worked hard, they've got the money, they want to treat their family well. God bless them, they can do that. But if that same homeowner, Tom, wanted to knock that bungalow down and build a duplex or a triplex or townhomes, homes that first-time buyers could actually afford, holy crow, they go through this regulatory ringer. The lawyers get involved, the NIMBY forces, descend like vultures. It gets drawn out over a year, and before you know it, it's so expensive, the homeowner just walks away and says, to hell with it. And who loses out? It's those 3 or 4 families in the first place. So we want to see this model that you just talked about, allowing that to happen, that you could have the duplex, the triplex on that lot, as long as you stay within the building footprint, right? That's allowed under zoning. That will be the key to unlocking home ownership for many first-time buyers and also empty nesters.
I think a lot of people were really happy hearing that announcement. And it's like, we could solve an issue here. I've got a question for you that me and Steve have kind of gone back and forth with over the years. And we talk about, like, the big thing always, and it's clear, right? When I'm selling a property and there's 10 offers on it, there's obviously a supply demand issue, right? Like, it's very clear in the numbers that we're seeing happen. Now we look across Canada and go like, okay, even when rates were super low, Edmonton prices didn't go up. So their supply demand's not what it is in the GTA or the greater Vancouver area or other areas. Like, do you think Canada has a supply issue? Do you think certain markets in Canada have a supply issue?
That's good. I'll use an old politics answer. Yes and yes on that one. Canada has the worst, I'm pretty sure it's the worst number of homes per capita of any of the comparable G7 countries. And we've got so much space, and we're actually the worst. And Ontario is among the worst in getting homes built. Another measure we saw on the Housing Affordability Task Force is they looked at all the OECD countries, basically the Western developed countries, Japan, Korea, that kind of thing. In terms of the time it takes to get a home built, we were second last of these 42 countries. Slovakia was the worst. Hudak is Slovak now. I got Slovak blood. I don't know what to tell my people that we're the worst, but my other people, the Canadians, are second worst. So yeah, we're terrible when it comes to getting homes built and supply, and Ontario is at the bottom of the pile within Canada.
Thanks so much for watching that clip. As always, if you have any questions about it, please throw it in the comments below. Hope everybody has a great day, and remember, home is where your story begins. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. You can learn more about the Storey Team at storyteam.ca. We also have a weekly podcast called The Tom Storey Show, with new episodes each Sunday. If you'd like to book a call directly with Tom, you can do that via the first link in the description.